Okay. Let me just quickly make a post over in the Discord. Okay, so this is going to be a pretty impromptu stream / recording for some community members on how I do some personal plugins from scratch. This one is going to be for the BrightSign local HTTP API. I have a couple players I'd like to control and get some status for and monitor. So this is going to be the API for that outside of a presentation. All I have to start with is the base framework that comes from Bitbucket. So bitbucket.org, Q-SYS communities, basic plugin framework. I take that and then I pretty much just take the contents, plop it in a folder, delete README license, the Q plug, and I'll make some edits here to work a little bit better for my own uses. So we're just going to call this BrightSign DWS. No, BrightSign local DWS. DWS stands for Diagnostics Web Server. That's what this API is. If you are looking for that documentation, it is right here at docs brightsign.biz developers LDWS info endpoints. It's not the most fun thing to search for, but it is out there. Also, if you go and just do a simple call /API/v1, you will actually get all the different calls your player supports pretty simply as well. So BrightSign local DWS will make this version 1.0. The way the compiler works is it's looking for a 4-octet number. So personally, I like making my version and build version the same. So this way it updates. Author is going to be myself. And we'll save that off. In the plugin Lua, I'm just going to clear some space in here as well as I think that's really all I want. We want sign DWS plugin. I personally like showing the build version. That's me. We are going to have a single page to start. If you have multiple pages, you would define that here. We are not going to have anything for get model. We might include some properties. We are not going to have any pins. Rectify properties are like hiding or showing them depending on other properties. We may do that. we are not going to have embedded components. We're not going to have wiring. We could just delete that. And that makes this a little simpler. One of the first things I personally like to do is I just like starting with my controls. And personally, I like including these in the Lua file, so this way Copilot actually works with it a little bit better. Let's see. The first control I want to define is going to be status. This is typical of a lot of plugins or components in Q-SYS. It'd be like OK, missing, full, compromised, that kind of stuff. Control type is going to be an indicator. And then indicator type of status. And we're going to pin style is going to be an output. That would be for its control pin. And user pin is going to equal true. So this way the user can actually decide if they want to see it or not. The next one we're going to have is an IP address. That's going to be a text control. Pin style, I'm actually going to be both, so it could be in out. User pin true. The next minimal control is, let's do a model. And that'll get enough to get something started. Now we need to we are going to take some of this, comment it out. We're not doing multi-page right now, but I might as I develop this, so I'm going to leave that aside. I am going to do the same thing I did with controls and put these locals and the return in the Lua file. And I am also going to get rid of these comments because they usually just take up space that I don't need to take up. Okay. I'm going to have a couple locals I'm going to use to draw my UI. I'm going to have a default text box size. Let's just say 100 pixels wide by 20. Let's actually make this a variable. Make one for font size. I like 12. I know the default is 9, but I like 12. And I like doing my layout where it starts from the top left corner and it increments and I draw my controls from there. Let's start with layout for status. I'm going to give that a style is going to be text. It has to be a string. Precision XYs. This is actually going to be double the width of the text box. Base height times 2. Font size, and that's it. And I like to function in a 4-pixel margin in between my controls. Then we're going to add a label for some of our controls. This one's going to be for IP address. XY. This is going to be exactly text box size. Text is going to equal IP address, font size, I want to write a line. I think that's it for that. It already figured out I want to put the IP address right next to that. I don't care to add the margin to the right of it. Anytime I am separating, yeah, I'm just going to make it. No, that's fine. I also realized I made a mistake, and I want this to be an indicator, and I want to make it a text indicator. Just confirming, yes. think Copilot is handling that very well. Okay. So now we should have a plugin that actually looks like something. So if we do a build task, dev, it should assemble the plugin, give it a quick look. And we do need to clear out the runtime. We can put in there now our require for rapid JSON at a minimum. Yes. So now if we pop into Designer, I have an instance of command send and receive already in here for just as a test endpoint. You could drag in, it has our name, it had the default property out of it, but we can see that we're getting IP address, we're getting model, we're getting status. These pins won't show unless they are in the control table, but also on the layout. So we have our status, IP address, model. I can see that my horizontal text align did not work, which means I typoed something there, which happens. That's because it is actually h-text align. So now if I do another build, one, 3, now they are aligning. Sweet. Now we can add a couple more controls. I want to add in a couple more of the reserved control names for some more status items. I want to add in MAC address. I'm going to make this an indicator. Output, this needed to be output. We actually do want that, and we want firmware version, but the reserved control name is actually device firmware. And I'm currently not building this first iteration with authentication yet. But I will probably want to build in username. We can just add the controls for now, and whether or not they're used, it's fine. Username, password. And I want to add in, okay, that's my first one. Username, password. So it'll try to authenticate if you don't provide them. If it gets a fault unauthenticated, then it'll wait for you to change username and password before it continues. That sounds like a good behavior. Now we're going to let Copilot fill out some more of the stuff for us. Let's do a dev build. Okay. Now I think we're going to be ready for some runtime code. Okay, we are going to need off the top of my head, whole timer. Let's see, a poll interval of 5 seconds is, I think, would be fine. We're going to need a connect, a disconnect. We're going to do an init. And it's going to be the last thing that we're going to call. We're going to stop the timer anytime a plugin restarts. Indicators are cleared, so we don't have to worry about clearing out indicators, or in this case, any controls at the moment. So we're going to do a poll function. And this is where we're going to do our HTTP GET. This is HTTP client dot get. It takes in a table. First one's going to be URL. It's going to equal HTTP. The IP address. And then info. we'll do some error handler later on. Headers is gonna equal table. We'll leave that empty for now. Timeout's going to be 30 seconds. And we're not going to build any auth into it yet. The event handler, we are going to define an anonymous function in here for that, though. I'm going to copy and paste out of the help docs that, only because I do like how that is. No Copilot, that is not all I want. Okay, we're going to check for code 200. Otherwise, we're going to print go away Copilot. Code error. So this is where I do have a response. I'm going to change this to response. And this is where response dot data result dot model, then string Okay, so we have a poll function. I'm going to make a poll timer. For now, we're going to make that stop. We're going to make sure that it's not an empty string. I'm fine with that print statement. And then we're going to pull. We're going to start with that. We're going to make this one connect. So this way, anytime we change the IP address, it will do another poll. And we're going to just try this out real quick to see if anything happens. So I legitimately have no idea if it is going to work yet. So we have no failure yet. So there we go. We have a model. So now I can start filling in serial number, device, active polling, getting a fair amount of data. And if we cleared IP address, nothing happens. So we will want to clear out those indicators. Okay, that's a start. Controls dot MAC address, serial number, device, firmware. That is fine. Okay, controls. Let's use the reserved function name, clear variables. Okay. We're going to start our poll timer there. Okay. Let's see, our serial is here. see. If response. When parsing JSON, one gotcha is if you can't just do if response data result model, because then if results isn't there, you'll actually get a nil Lua exception, because it can't check for a result model within a nil of result. So you have to do a tree of if response and response data and response data result, then, and then I want local player info is going to equal that. Now it also means I can shorten down these results. The other thing I could do to reduce it even more put a conditional. We're going to do the serial number. We're going to do device firmware. And that is going to be this. I don't actually think we're going to need a disconnect, because we'll do a connect. It'll clear out. Only thing we'd have to watch out for is if we stop and then you get a response after. That's the only tricky part. But we'll see how that works out. Let's do a build. Dev. Okay. And let's try this out. Put in RPGs. Okay. So I'm not getting the serial number. I'm sure that's because I let Copilot spell out something that I didn't even look at the data. And we are seeing that that first connection took the 5-second hold. Okay. Let's troubleshoot that. So serial number is just going to be serial. That is simple. And then the other thing to do is We could do a poll immediately right after. I personally want to bring this down to 3 seconds. I really want this to be less than this, personally. Okay. There's our serial number, device firmware, model. Okay, let's get MAC address going. MAC address is going to be down in Ethernet. We could check for the first item in Ethernet, IPv4 MAC. Okay. Ethernet information, if player info dot Ethernet N1 info Ethernet control MACness okay. If Ethernet info dot IPv4 dot MAC, then MAC address string is going to equal that, else we're going to leave it blank. Yes. Dev should be at version 8. We are. F6. Okay. Now we get into a troubleshooting point. Ethernet information found. Within that Ethernet information, we are looking for IPv4, IPv4, I see the problem. It's a table item. That's my problem. I did a whoopsie. It got to here. Whoops. Okay. There we go. Now we have a MAC address. Now we have enough information to pass to a monitor proxy for reflect. And also just have a good amount of information for a single pane of glass dashboard for a site with a couple BrightSign players. Now that we have some one-way control working before closing it out for the night, I'd like to add some manual control. So let's add a control for reboot. This is going to be trigger button. What other? Reboot password. We don't want that. Remote snapshot we will want to do at some point. Let's do reboot for now. That is the biggest control many people will want. Between that and video endpoints. Let's start with reboot. So there's a control item. This is still going to be Still going to be right. It is going to be button sized. Button style of trigger, position, size. Good. Let's do that. Do have our reboot button. There it is. So let's give it some logic. So the general that input is a put. It does take in some data. I like that command. Okay. So we don't need to do factory reset. We can optionally set auto run to false. We're going to just do that for now. We're going to do a connected, sorry. New connected equals true. False. False. If connected, then reboot. Okay, so let's see. Boom. So I got feeling connected. Did not fire. That would possibly do it. Let's delete that out. Bring that in. Yes. Okay, so we're not rebooting. Oh, that's why. When you define an event handler as a function, you just got to do it, not this way you're not calling. If you put the brackets on the end, it is assigning the result of issuing this command and not the function pointer itself. I just realized it'd be nice if we actually showed the debug. Still not sending the reboot. Typo. That's why. It is never going to be true if it is nil. Real programming problems right there. That's how I could prove this is live and not scripted. .404, sending reboot. Why was it not found? Ah, that is why. It needs control reboot. I had the URL wrong. And if I had tried to use the command send and receive that I actually placed there before, I would have seen that. Yes, F6. 200. I'm connected. Reboot sent successfully, and I can see my player is rebooting. We know it. Then we have a poll failed. Connection timed out after 3 seconds. So on a code 0, we're going to want to keep trying to poll, but not say connected. Other codes are probably false. So this is where we can start getting into status. Status by default is going to come up as 0. Its value will be 0 because it's a status, an indicator. We want it to be set to missing. And I want to say that as a 4 is missing and a 2 is full. We want to equal 4. And for my own sanity, I'm just going to run this. Super quick to confirm. Yes. Okay. So we know we have a fault there, we have a missing there, and up here, we want to set it to 0. On connect, so then let's change this to a fixed version, because I think this will be a good spot to end it for the night. And this can be continued another night. We could go deeper into doing some debug and then live capture and then rendering the screenshot onto a control. So this way you can actually monitor what the BrightSign is actually showing from within Designer without needing to worry about what it's wired up to. Also, we could control video output settings so you don't have to go into Diagnostics web server to see, hey, it's plugged into display, what's the resolution of it, what's the EDID, whatever else. It'd be nice to be able to extract that also from Designer dynamically. So we'll emulate. It starts off as missing. Oh, and we need to build in authentication support. So we can see it's there. If we remove the IP address, it goes missing, set, and we're not polling anymore. If I paste it, we reconnect. We're polling, we're getting some info. And we'll send a reboot command. It's going to go missing. The IP address didn't change, so it's going to think or know that it's the same device. So we don't necessarily want to clear out indicators in this case, because it'll be most likely a reboot or the device went offline, power got pulled from it, whatever else. We may still want to know what the MAC address and serial number was for that device. Especially if you have, say, the serial number mapped through to reflect, you don't need that clearing out and then updating reflect every time it reboots. But it came back up online successfully, and we're back to polling. So that was a little bit of a 0 to functioning plugin, just as a quick from the start. We copied over the base plugin, went to info, changed some information, went to plugin, stripped out the reserved functions for wiring pins, embedded components, model, the stuff that we don't need. Left the default property and rectify, we're just not using it right now. Started putting together some controls in a control table, then defining a layout, drawing it from top to bottom, with some variables to change how we want the plugin to look. So we don't have to do a lot of math ourselves, let the computer do the math. Then went into the runtime, added some basic runtime logic to create a poll timer, use the HTTP client API to poll and get information from the player, have a status to know whether we're actively connected or not, and then also have a basic reboot button that if we're connected to the player issues the base reboot command, currently with no other properties in the data. So this way we could reboot a player, especially if it's hardwired, as opposed to the traditional way a lot of people do now is they will install a PoE powered BrightSign and reboot it from the switch. So yeah, maybe I'll do this again soon and do a part 2 to do authentication, screen preview, and video. Other than that, have a great night.